set ideal of beauty changes. Depending on where you live, when you live, even your age, trends and perceptions change. The traditional concepts of beauty have been historically inconsistent. In the 1800s, the ideal was having the fairest, palest skin. This has transformed to having a sun-kissed bronze glow. Another example, in just a decade, we've gone from an ideal of plucked, pencil-thin eyebrows of the 2000s to a polar opposite trend of big, fluffy brows. It's no surprise that it's hard to follow these trends, and yet we can each spend hours studying our reflections and trying to match the ever-changing ideal. Think about what you do when you walk up to a mirror. Do you scan, analyze, pick yourself apart, wondering if you match up with the current beauty trends, if you look beautiful? Why is it that we can only see flaws in that mirror? All of us know we should be nicer to ourselves, and yet this doesn't change much. We would never criticize another person like we do ourselves. And no, this isn't because every other person we come in contact with is some perfect 10 on a subjective scale of attractiveness. It comes down to this simple truth. We really don't care that much what other people look like. Think about it. What's the most beautiful thing about your mother? What about your grandmother? Oh, wait just a second. Were you about to pull out a picture from a few decades ago and highlight their perfectly on-trend permed hair and blue eyeshadow? Oh, maybe not. But were you about to highlight their wrinkle-free skin or their small waistline? Of course not. Because this isn't what matters most to you. It isn't what you find most beautiful. We are far more impacted by a mother's kindness and a sister's forgiveness. It isn't her flawless complexion that makes an impression. This is the type of beauty that lasts and resonates far more than perfect eyebrows or the latest cultural idea of a perfect size and a perfect shape. This is the beauty that we care so much more about in the people around us. So then why is it that we can't impress upon ourselves it isn't our looks that matter? That others do care so much more about our kindness and our generosity, about our empathy and our compassion? This isn't a new issue. It isn't a new question. Why do we place our own perception of our appearance so much higher on our list of critiques? Why can't we connect our perception of ourselves and others around us? This double standard is deceiving. This disconnect between what we judge important in ourselves and others around us is incredibly harmful. By the age of 13, 53% of American girls are unhappy with their bodies. This number grows to 78% by the time these girls reach 17. And this isn't just a teenage issue. Little girls as young as 5 talk about needing to go on a diet because they are fat. A recent study asked women in their 60s, "Are you happy with your body?" And 68% of women said no. From our mothers to our grandmothers, to our aunts and our sisters and our friends, this is a horrific beauty trend that persists throughout the ages. 7 in 10 girls believe that they are not good enough or that they do not measure up in some way. They don't measure up because they are holding themselves to a standard they can't recognize is impossible. And these aren't just statistics. These are real people. Meet my best friend. Mirabella is one of the kindest people that I know. She is understanding and compassionate, adventurous and hilarious. She is a ray of sunshine to every single person that she meets, and yet for a long time, she struggled with feeling she was even worth talking to. When Mirabella was 12, she had the chickenpox. For an agonizing 2 weeks, she was covered in red, itchy pock marks. These marks scarred her face long after the virus disappeared. This event had devastating consequences for Mirabella. Day after day, she would study her reflection in the mirror and criticize her face. But not only did she decide she wasn't beautiful, she decided that she just wasn't enough. My best friend thought that because she didn't have a perfect complexion, somehow that meant she wasn't worth talking to. She tied the entirety of her worth into her perception of herself. She thought that in order to have people love her and want to be around her, that she would have to hide the scarring on her face under layers of foundation and concealer and mascara. She says it that way because she's from Australia. Now, I was best friends with Mirabella throughout all of this, but I had no idea the mental and the emotional struggle her self-image was going through. I was clueless to the months of anxiety, the months of depression, the months of suicidal thoughts, all because she was convinced she wasn't beautiful. Mirabella truly began to believe that unless other people saw her as beautiful, that they wouldn't care about her. That if she didn't have a perfect complexion, that other people would just discard her. If she couldn't be beautiful, she was worthless. This is my best friend, the person that I see as beautiful for so much more than her face. If you were to ask me if I thought this person was worth talking to, worth caring about, worth loving, I think the answer would be pretty clear. I can list attributes and stories for hours about what makes Mirabella beautiful. Stories of her selflessness and her bravery, of her compassion and her understanding. But none of that actually mattered when she couldn't see or believe it for herself. She struggled alone and couldn't recognize what other people were really seeing in her. And this isn't just a story about Mirabella. Would you ever want your best friend, your mother or your sisters to hold themselves by such toxic, meaningless standards? Of course not. And yet we all do this to ourselves. We hold ourselves to standards that we don't want to live by. It's exhausting. But what can we do to change it? Mexican-American actress Salma Hayek once said, "People often say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I say one of the most liberating things about beauty is realizing you are the beholder." In between a sunrise and a sunset is a wonderful world full of beautiful places and things and people to behold. Recognize and give weight to what you are beholding. You have the power to decide where you will place your emphasis. What is it that you truly value? What type of beauty do you care about? Yes, it is possible to value compassionate generosity and still want your eyebrows to be on point. Of course, you can adore blue eyes without being a shallow person. What type of beauty do you value? When you recognize what beauty you value, you can choose to give it weight, and you can emphasize what you are beholding. Because I want to live in a world where my best friend knows I appreciate her selfless service so much more than a perfect complexion. I want to live in a world where my grandmother knows that there is so much more that I care about than a wrinkle-free face. When we recognize what we behold, we can help our best friends to know their worth, and we can help our grandmothers to feel appreciated. We can begin to close the disconnect between how we view ourselves and how we view the people around us. How will that change the next time you face yourself in this mirror? In the ways that you interact with the people around you, in the ways they view themselves, in the way you view yourself. What are you going to behold? Thank you.